Hello to you, ma'am, sir, bro, sis, brothers and sisters, cousins, pick your poison. Earthworms, birds, I love birds. Whatever identifiers you want to use. It's been a minute. I wanted to take a break and just learn and incorporate and even just sit with myself and challenge myself as to, how I can show up better. Less about me and a particular agenda per se, and just channel spirits, source, etc. I've been delving into the Gnostic scriptures more, the Pistis Sophia, which is just I cannot recommend enough. For anybody who has maybe grappled with faith a bit and maybe feels connected but doesn't necessarily jive maybe with canon scripture like the King James Bible, the Pistis Sophia is a great start. The Infancy Gospels of Thomas, excuse me, my throat chakra, apparently I need to take a drink. Maybe the Lord is like, quit speaking about these secrets. So if you think of like religion in the Bible, like a game of telephone, for example, and you think of like the older scriptures, maybe the documentation closer to the time that when Jesus was alive, and then you factor in history and what we know, and you think of the Dark Ages, for example, heretics, people burned at the stake, all of that jazz, where you weren't really supposed to know much, you were just supposed to serve. It's interesting that some of these texts that were lost are coming back and we're able to make the connections. So for the more critical thinker, so to speak, that is like, the Bible seems like mythology, which William Donahue, going completely sideways, is a fantastic sort of metaphysical pastor, and you can check out some of his stuff as well. I was just listening to a great sermon of his to where he's talking about, well, yeah, the Bible is mythology, and a lot of Christians don't like me for saying that, but I love Jesus, and he does, and it's just neat, these times that we are in, being such a huge nerd. I don't talk about politics and political events and current events and the things going on in the world. I'm aware. I will never forget, I once had a dynamic in my life, and God loved them, but I think what NPR does is important, much like PBS. I think it's incredibly important that people have access to knowledge and have access to information without a doubt. However, for me, just the non-bias, that's something that I've struggled with in observing particular broadcast types, etc., to where I feel like I observe a narrative. So, as ever, I guess I've been observed as judgmental, what have you, and that might be the name of this video. It might be about judgment versus observation, etc. But as a critical thinker, I truly believe you can't actually love something until you are absolutely okay with how it can be positive or negative, and allow somebody to have potentially a negative space, but again, to maybe not demean you or dismiss you in that process. And talks for other days. I know that there are certainly people who would argue that they have felt demeaned and dismissed by my observations, and that is something that bothers me so much so that I'm constantly always evaluating how I can show it better for people. That being said, I might not particularly engage with them or choose to even align with them, because if they aren't themselves actually able to give what they're asking, it becomes abuse as I see it. And my catchphrase, that's a talk for another day. We will unpack love at some point, and I'm sure in some videos I will probably allude to it. If this is your first time, if you've checked out other stuff, you'll see my mind, it's like a spider web. I have this way of holding on to the micro and the macro. So for example, I can quite literally just start talking about a leaf in a way that you wouldn't necessarily just, the vast green expanse and the veins, and then eventually just be like, and the branches reaching upwards, and hold space for the forest, while also the leaf, and hyperfixating, and it can be maddening because of the way that I'm so passionate and the way that I advocate for the things that I do. But gosh, this journey is just so beautiful and incredible. And when you are in alignment and you're on the right path, there's just forward momentum. I've had such movement and growth and just changes at work, just even dynamics and the energies and connections, establishing and just getting to know certain people better and getting to revisit older connections, and also then coming to realize that certain connections should absolutely never be revisited because perhaps they shouldn't have even happened in the first place. No regrets for the love I've given, even slightly, but there are definitely certain times, and this is something that I would say to anyone, where we do have to empower ourselves. I shout out to my Leo, I love you, one of my besties. We were having a dialogue, and I'd asked them, like, hey, would you, if I happen to mention, just some of our shenanigans in my videos, would that be upsetting to you? Especially if I was like mindful and I didn't mention names. And this person was just like, no, are you kidding? And they were like, what's your channel? And they're like, I might check it out, see if I get mentioned. So shout out to you. I do try to be incredibly mindful about that because I am aware that, my energies and how I showed up can affect how another person engaged with me. And to assume that that is how they are with everybody isn't necessarily fair, though it does stand to reason. Patterns, they probably are, but I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and let other people make these particular deductions. So I don't like to speak on things because it's gossip. It's not kind per se. But God bless that person, because I've had other, and this is how you know who is right for you, the people that don't want to deny you of your voice, because I've had other energies that have just completely flipped a lid. Unfortunately, even lost followers to where maybe shoes fit a certain way, and maybe they felt attacked or felt like things were about them or what have you, and it got too real, or, who knows, 1,000,001 reasons. But it's such a beautiful thing because even though they don't necessarily have to come back and tell me I'm right, you kind of get proven through it through actions. And advocacy and agency is so important. But it's a good detector of narcissism. Like, I can't encourage you enough. Speak your truth. Lovingly and respectfully, mind you, considerate of the other person and how they want you to communicate. And if you are meeting their needs, by their standards, etc., and they still are just finding things probably narcissistic. Now, to be fair, we are all narcissists. In fact, I right after COVID, I had written an article about narcissism. It was very interesting because I got a lot of feedback. Basically, my views are to deduce someone as narcissistic is to, in fact, be caught up in your own unhealthy levels of narcissism. And anyone that has actually familiarized themselves with, it's a spectrum. So few people actually have narcissistic personality disorder. There are things like different hallmarkers and symptomologies that resonate with bipolar personality disorder. So it's emotional avoidance. There are all types. And as the DSM, as we continue to grow and evolve, it's interesting, but we will continue to learn and unpack. But we should all advocate for agency. And I'm just so grateful for this place that I'm at, and just the journey and just the healing and the growth. I'm actually coming up on a year anniversary of just one of the best decisions of my life. I will never regret having given love, and again, just personal agency. But I feel like people align in romantic attachments, and I'm guilty of this. I in retrospect and in hindsight, being able to sit with this, was able to kind of see my own patterns. When we align with people sometimes, and I'm not saying that everybody does. As an outside observer, though, I don't know that I have inherently necessarily seen a dynamic where this isn't the case. But in romantic relationships, people will align and not know themselves as much as they should, and not always even know the tools that they're lacking or ways that they're able to communicate or etc. But I am grateful because as I've kind of gotten to sit and reflect and even unpack some things and re-explore, it's great to get the affirmation and just to kind of understand with perspective and clarity that my biggest transgression has always been to lose myself in trying to be of service for someone who wasn't even reciprocating in the first place. So at the end of the day, if you hear something bad about me, believe that person. But please ask them what they brought to the table and ask them how long I tolerated that and how many times I asked them to change and how many times they crossed that boundary. Earlier I mentioned being an INFJ and just exploring that more. It is so neat. And as I watch the video, sometimes it makes it harder to just not necessarily get bitter with society. Like, I've kind of joked that I'm a staunch nonconformist, but by all means, I highly recommend taking your Myers-Briggs personality type test. It's 16personalities.com. You can do it for free, and then you can learn more about types, but feel free to learn about my type, INFJs. We often get described as like individual or idealistic, just some of the things, unrealistic, perfectionist, but yet, funnily enough, any INFJ I've ever met, and mind you, we are a small population, so I've only met a few, but while we will ride so hard for our points, I swear to you, if we are not met with resistance, as in people, not even that they need to conform or agree with us, but if they are able to be like, I don't see it that way, but I see how it could apply, or if they're curious and they want to learn more, we absolutely are like, okay, cool, I want to learn more about what you want to do too. We can be incredibly stubborn. The problem is we see so far in the future. So if we are being stubborn about something, it's because we actually already know what you're talking about because we thought about it. And to be fair, we also know we don't know it the way you do because we're not you, but we have such a grasp of the meta and the outside. And it's such a fine line because, again, yes, everybody needs to be heard, but I'm going to go kind of sideways for a second. So many people don't even actually listen to understand and learn. So many people listen to speak, like just to let the other person get their point out and so they can talk, or then they listen so they can agree or disagree. And I'm certainly not the moral police, but what makes active, valid listening, what makes it more pure in intention, wanting to understand, wanting to connect. And that is like an INFJ thing. We are always bigger picture minded and we're always trying to understand. So even if we're not understanding something, we are like asking questions, we're trying to understand. Or we can oftentimes even make like affirmative statements, but in a questioning way, if that makes sense. And we have this gift of highlighting unhealed egos. What Carl Jung, funnily enough, going back to the personality types, etc., what he would refer to is, a lack of just integration, a lack of potentially knowing the shadow and integrating it. And we have such a deep mirror effect because we are able to kind of remove ourselves, if that makes sense, but still be present. So it is incredibly easy for people to project their shadows onto us. And it is so beautiful, but it has taught me to be a bit selective. And like I said, I used to think that maybe perhaps I was antisocial, but I've actually learned it's not the case. It's that I've come through experience to understand that, so like I've joked that I don't like groupthink, it scares me. And I've unpacked that more, just again with the right people who aren't triggered by me saying my weird things and who aren't trying to disagree with me per se. That, or even if I trigger them, we could like build on it. I've learned it's just in the groupthink because a lot of times people are just trying to get by. These are called coping mechanisms. Then we go further, maladaptive coping mechanisms, as in, what is this doing for me? How is this helping me? Am I challenging myself to have it be less of a crutch, etc.? We are a very apathetic society, and we are continually, as I've noticed, I use the royal we. That's why I tend to struggle quite a bit, to be completely honest with you, because I am compassionate and understanding. But I've also learned that's come to bite me in the butt, so to speak, because I am to a certain point. Yes, this happened to you. Are you going to let this identify you? Or are you going to take control of your energy? Are you going to do more from it? And I understand that sometimes that can read as potentially gaslighting or a lack of empathy. And I've talked even about not potentially unpacking the traumas. I understand that life traumatizes us all. But every type of violence that you can think of that a human being has encountered, I've experienced it. And unfortunately multiple times. And from types of people. So again, I don't want anybody to feel bad, because other people have had it happen. They've had it happen more, they've had it happen worse, and they haven't necessarily been able to find purpose and meaning in the pain like I have. And it's not that I share to try and say one way is better or my way is better. It's in just showing something different, because when and if something resonates, it's for the people that are going to get it when they're meant to, not the people that won't. I know in another video I kind of shared, I made a comment about a celebrity drummer, and I'm not necessarily about the way most people do celebrities, although again, rest in power Ozzy, he was one of the greats. Nina Simone was fantastic, Paul Walker, there were so many good people. Unfortunately, because of language, it's interesting. People don't want to think they're dumb, so then we generalize. But then maybe people are quick to demonize and what have you. And then it's like, eesh, I don't want to say you're not intelligent, but are you intelligent enough to give me the benefit of the doubt? Are you questioning, etc.? And it was actually really beautiful, because I got to unpack it with a friend of mine, just the way that we mirror and project. And I don't think a lot of people have actually really thought about the fact that, like, for example, I have my intention and I have my aim, and I know what I'm trying to convey to you, and I know what I'm trying to communicate, and I know how I think I will do that if I use these certain words, if I use this certain tone. Because of past experience, I'm pretty sure that this is how it will come off. But then there are other people, and because of how those people are and their upbringing, and potentially even how they learn to navigate their everyday stresses, they're perceiving me different ways. And even if I were to do something very similar the next day, because of how their day affected them, they might be perceiving me differently. And everybody does this, and everybody, because they're different, they do this. And it's just so beautiful and wild, but frustrating and maddening, because why do we even agree on anything? Why do we think that we agree on anything? Because it sort of resonates, right? And it's wild. And I've really been challenging myself to absorb that, especially in moments of conflict. Oh my goodness, I don't know what your experiences have been like. For me, it just seems like some people are just upset and angry. And it seems like when you don't necessarily want to be angry, it can make them a little more angry and upset. And I don't know, maybe I'm projecting, who knows. But it's incredible, and it's amazing, and it's such a gift to be alive, even with some of the more chaotic polarities. And again, I don't want you to think that like I fart rainbows or glitter or unicorns, because that's not the case. In fact, I can sit in my room sometimes and just be sad and cry and lament and just be like, oh my gosh, people are awful. How are people so mean to each other? My new kink is comment feeds, just even on YouTube, because I think it's so important. We are, I don't know, I feel like we are not doing well as people, and I don't mean that meanly. I say that with love, because we're so easily stressed, we're so easily triggered. If society were okay, again, people say I'm a dreamer, this weird utopian hippie, but like the fact that our society, and to succeed in society, is only possible when still allowing other people to starve and suffer, and for whatever reason. And some people would say, oh, well, they don't want to work, they make bad choices, etc. There's such a lack of empathy. I don't know. Like, I have such a bleeding heart, I guess. So it's hard. It's hard to not be mean. And especially like being a deep thinker, and then especially understanding and wanting to be like, well, maybe it's because you just feel small inside and blah, 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 blah. And it's just also part of the beauty, because how better of a way to prove what I mean? And that's where one, again, has to kind of learn discernment and to be careful. I love hiking. I love going on trails, but I oftentimes will hike alone. And I've realized, if you're from like Criminal Minds, another 48, this is how bad things can happen to people sometimes. And I was walking on a particular trail, and I was walking past a dock, and this man comes up out of nowhere, like a merman, and just up on the water, like reverse splash. And he's like, hey, how's it going? And I'm just like, hey. And I like making new friends, to be clear. And no, I wasn't like inherently worried that I was going to be assaulted. But dudes, just beware. And I'm not saying all men, but just know, oftentimes it is a concern for ladies, especially like being out in the middle of the woods, and if you're getting like close in their personal space, because he was not aware that, he was not honoring like the 2-foot rule. He was like, we almost kept bumping shoulders, and I kept him walking backing to the side a little bit. But we start talking, and we're walking, and we're making our way around the trail. And throughout the conversation, he kind of keeps handing me stuff. And so he stops at the bathroom at one point, and he's like, would you mind waiting so we can keep the conversation going? It's great. And I'm like, yeah, sure. Again, I'm not a nice person. I need to be 5,000. I'm not nice. I truly believe that nice is manipulative. More importantly, I don't give a shit or a fig if you think I'm good, if you think I'm bad, whatever. I would say I'm a kind person. I truly believe we all suffer from certain things, and I truly believe it's in my power to do things, always, even just the smallest things, to make this world a better place. And it makes me feel good to do that. And maybe it's ego, to be completely honest with you. And I've even thought about that at certain points, and just been like, maybe I'm the most selfish and awful person in the entire world. But I'm not necessarily, like, I don't think that's going to get me into heaven, if that makes sense. And I'm not worried about my image, because I'll be the first to tell you, on the worst day, if I have a temper and feel disrespected, while I will definitely try to pull my punches, who knows if I might snap, because I'm still human. And I always work on it, because I'm aware that I do that. But the first step is admitting that I do that. Surprise! I'm not perfect, guys. I don't know about you. It's part of the problem with a lot of society. Why don't people with those people these days? A lot of people are always looking to externalize and think about how everybody else is the problem, versus considering how they failed and how they aren't showing up, or only speaking to like absolute base needs. And I've been guilty of that too, to be completely honest with you. As I've said, just even in my own relationships, I have had to sit and think about how maybe I was looking to be more parented, as in like, oh, I need sympathy, baby me, versus maybe being like, look, I feel like crap, it's a horrible day, I really need to be a whiny baby. So if that's something that you want to do and be there for me, that'd be great. But I'm a big girl. I also need to learn to be able to do that for me, and learn to not be a little turd if you can't show up for me in that way. So that, the one of those ways that I can think of inherently where I failed and have worked to get better as I've aligned and just continue to grow. And I lost my point. Dang it. I was doing so good. But look at that, we're getting at the 20-something point. I think it's probably because my throat is dry, and I'm feeling like it's getting, I need a sip. So, yes, life is amazing. And if you're not feeling like it's amazing, I'm sorry. If you are feeling like it's amazing, brava. You can do things, just small things. Get, your favorite food, find a new book, learn a new hobby. It's, make a new friend, feel free to comment. I love to engage. Say what's up. So we're all in this together, and all we can do truly is just kind of show up how we want to show up and live with purpose and meaning. I find that helps us to be our most authentic and our most okay time and time again. And while it won't always look alike to the same person, I've noticed that people are going to, again, as I mentioned earlier, kind of see you through who they are too. And in my humble opinion, the ones that are willing to be aware of that and work on that and be accountable and whatnot are definitely worth keeping. God, I'm so grateful for those in my life that I'm able to. And I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for you taking some time to just sit and share some thoughts. I find it very interesting that, my shorts, I get way more views, and, our attention spans are so short, the doom scrolling, and the longer videos, they're not as captivating. And in the society we have, to be honest, I almost feel like I could just talk about how much I think everything sucks and just whine and complain negatively and probably do well. Or I could even get like half naked and do well. And I think it's unfortunate that people are so easily manipulated. And not that I get a gold star for not choosing to go that route, but I think it's something to dare to be different. And hopefully that helps to encourage and empower y'all to do the same. Truly, we have this moment and this life and ups and downs and lefts and rights and everything in between. But we are bound to one another by all of our actions. And, you hopefully are doing what you need to do to be healthy and hale and to show up for yourself authentically and to unmask. Because, again, nobody actually agrees with you anyway. They can't. And I'm not trying to be mean. They're just different. They can only kind of resonate a bit. And it's the first unfortunate ego trap. And I'm guilty of it. I'm constantly working to remind myself that just because it seems like, that's honestly how some of my biggest problems have started. Because I think I understand what's going on so confidently. And I had no idea. So, just some food for thought. What are you doing to change the world? I know you're existing and you're here, and that's a great start. And keep in mind, there's no shame. In fact, it's all strength to learn new things, to incorporate new things. That's the whole point. We're growing, we're changing, we're learning, and we're evolving. And much like nature, the way the cycles change, we're changing. And it's so beautiful. And we're here in these moments. And I thank you for sharing some of your time with me. I am loving you this day and always. And my email is in the comments if you think there's something I could do to be of service, thoughts, prayers, whatever. Unfortunately, I have a lot of money, so I can't help you out in that way. But just aligning, connecting. Heck, if you're in the Midwest, let me know, because who knows, I might be able to buy you lunch. That being said, it's such a beautiful existence, and never forget the weight of your impact. Just, you are as good as the best of what you do, and you are as bad as the worst that you do. But the good thing is you are growing and changing, and it's a beautiful thing. I'm rooting for you. I don't necessarily have to know you, and it doesn't mean I'm not. And if we get to align paths one day, that'd be fantastic. But regardless, butterfly effect. You are doing big things. So hopefully I get to see. And either way, if not, thank you just for sharing in this time, in this space with me. And just who knows what we're going to be doing. But we are changing the world. I'm loving you this day and always.